Hi, and welcome back to Life Hope Talks. I am your host, Selena. We're continuing with the series on seeking closure from someone who is alive and well. They know how to get in contact with you, they know your phone number, your email address, um, they know where you live, and yet when you ask for closure or ask to have a conversation with them about how they've decided to exit your life, they will not give you closure. And that is very challenging for many people who experience this abrupt ending to their relationship. Now, this relationship is not specific only to romantic relationships. There are many seeking closure from a best friend, um, a friend, a colleague, adult children, and yet they're unable to get that closure. They're unable to get that last sit down where they can talk about what went wrong, where they can just empty out their heart and talk about how they feel and the impact that um, the termination of the relationship has had on them. So we're talking about that, seeking that closure from someone who just will not grant you the closure. They will not respond to you. And there are times when the relationship ends and there are joint responsibilities. Maybe you have a house together, you have children, you have financial income together, financial investments. So you have things together, and the person who has decided to exit your life, I'll call him or her the exiter. So when the exeter has left your life, they'll talk about the house. If you call them about the house, or if you call them about repairs to the home, if you call them about the children and you want to talk about the vehicle or other financial responsibilities that the two of you share, they're all for it. They will talk with you. They may keep it very minimal, but nonetheless, they will talk to you about it because that's a joint responsibility. But the moment you begin to talk about sitting down and talking and focusing on what went wrong, and just to be able to express them leaving your life, how that has affected you, it's not happening. The exeter just will not give you closure. So there are some people where a relationship ends abruptly or the relationship just ends badly and they're okay. They don't need to have closure. They don't want that final sit down to talk about how they're feeling and what happened in the relationship or what didn't happen, and how they led up, how things have led up to where it's at. But then you have others who do want to sit down and talk about what happened and how they're feeling and how they are dealing with this loss. Um, and I think that there are some things to consider, some significant things to consider with that for those who do look for um, closure. Many have just in that relationship have really invested themselves into the relationship. They've invested emotions, their love, finances, their presence. Um, they just saw their lives being included with the Exeter. They just, every aspect of their life, or the majority of the aspects of their lives, they've seen with this person. Um, so when the relationship just doesn't end right, you wake up to a text message, a long text message, or you wake up to a voicemail, or you check your phone on your lunch break and you have this voicemail or you have this email where someone is breaking off the relationship and they're removing themselves from your life, and you're unable to respond to it. You're unable to um, just say, process it with them. Um, that doesn't happen. However, the exiter has put all the things they wanted to say into that email or that 5-minute voicemail or the series of text messages. And they knew that you would be affected. They may not have known the depth of how you would have been affected by it, but they knew that there was going to be some kind of emotional response to what they had to say in that email, voicemail, or text message. So in their communication, they may not have known the ins and outs or been able to predict how you would respond to it. Nonetheless, they knew that you would respond, that there would be an emotional reaction to what they have to say and what their plans are to move on with their life without you. So it becomes very difficult for those who are seeking closure to move forward with their lives without the challenges, because their heart is still filled with questions and they have things that they would like to say to the exeter who just will not hear it. They will not make time to sit down and have that conversation. So it becomes a challenge for those of us who look for closure because we put so much into that relationship and then the relationship terminated and it terminated in such a bad way. You know, there are many experiences that others have had where maybe the exeter called and said their spiel, and you really didn't have much of a chance or opportunity to speak and say anything because you were too busy crying. Because all you heard was what they had to say, and it began to kind of riddle you and move you in a very strong emotional way. And it becomes very difficult for someone to move on when the relationship has ended and the exeter heard you crying, saw you crying, you broke down, you could barely breathe in the moment, and yet they were okay leaving you in that place. But when you were in a relationship with them, they were always checking in on you. They told you how much they'll be there for you. You know, all of those wonderful, lovely things that encourages us to trust the other person and to move forward with the relationship. But they saw that you were in emotional distress, or they heard it. They saw it either in person, in video, perhaps they heard it on the phone, or if you sent an email, they can read that email and imagine that you were in such great pain, and yet they're okay. They were okay with moving on with their life and leaving you in that spot, leaving you right there to deal with the distress on your own. So many people who have experienced the breakup in that way often seek closure. Of course, that's not the only reason why, or that's the only experience that will thrust a person into wanting to have closure or that last sit down with the exeter. That's just an experience that many have had, where they wonder, like, how were you able to leave me in such emotional distress and not look back and come back to say, to check in on me or to make sure that I was going to be okay. But just days ago, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I was all you can see. I was all you can hear. I was all you thought about. So you communicated. But yet, in my moment of breakdown, in your moment of breakdown with the exeter, they kept exiting your life, knowing you were broken down, knowing that you were in that distress. And out of that often arises questions, like, how were you okay with continuing your life knowing I was crying, knowing I was distraught? How were you okay with that? So often when something like that happens, a person does want to have that closure. They do want to talk about it. They do want to have the conversation about, you know, what went wrong. Um, how are you okay with not coming back to check in on me, not calling me, a couple days later, a day later, a week later, at some point, and yet no phone call, no text message, no email to say, hey, are you okay? I know we didn't leave things, things end pretty badly, but are you okay? Do you need closure? That last conversation. So when you have instances like that, and of course that's not the only instance, but when you have experiences like that, it often puts you in that place where you want closure, and moving forward becomes even more challenging. It's not impossible, it's just challenging. You have some difficult days, you may have a very long difficult period, but nonetheless it can happen. It's just very challenging to do so. And then I also want to begin to address some of the misconceptions about those who are seeking closure from someone who's alive and well. Many think that because when one party wants to have this closure session or this closure meeting, however you title that closure conversation, many people think that you want to talk to the person, the exeter, about re-entering your life. You want them back. So you're going to be talking about pleading, bargaining to try to get them back. That is not always the case. And oftentimes that is not the case. The person that seeks closure often just want to be able to talk and say that final goodbye. Because remember, closure relates to being able to bring a particular chapter of your life to an end. It's bringing something to an end. So often when people are looking for closure, they know that the exeter has made this decision, and the exeter can make that decision. They're just looking to be able to bring that part of their life to the right closure, the right way, and be able to move forward. That once that conversation is over, they can move forward with the rest of their life and reshape their life without the exeter in it. So there's a real big misconception with that, where many think that when one party wants to have that closure conversation, it means that they're going to try to talk the exeter back and re-entering their life, or not making a decision that they've made, when that's untrue. That's very untrue in many, many instances. And another thing I would like to highlight with closure, it's not impossible. As I said a moment ago, it's not impossible to move forward. It's just challenging it's challenging because you valued that person that left your life. You valued the exeter at some point. You really value them. And because they've snatched themselves abruptly out of your life, it doesn't mean you no longer love them or care for them, but you value them. So when someone leaves your life in such a bad way, and things were left off so bad, it often kind of catapults you into grieving. It's as if they're dead. That it's as if they've passed away, because you no longer have them in your life. And even if you and the exeter have joint responsibilities together, and you're only talking for the kids' sake, or to take care of the home, or to handle the joint finances, it's not the same. So you find yourself grieving. You're going through the stages of grief. One moment, a few days, you can feel really sad, really get down and depressed. And then in the middle of that day, you might feel angry as you think about, why did this person do it like that? They know what kind of person you are. They know how you value conversations. They know who they were with. And then for them to end it and do you like that, it really bothers you when someone you love, someone you care for deeply, um, decides to just uproot out of your life and in a nasty way, in an uncaring, unsensitive way. So it can push you into grieving. You begin to grieve because it's a tremendous loss to you, especially when that person has been in your life for a long period of time, or during times where you have had many struggles and many unexpected life events. Um, it becomes very difficult. So you go through those stages of grief, and it might take some time. Of course, you expect it will take some time to move forward with your life. And there will be challenges because sometimes you will feel angry, you will feel very sad or depressed. And then there's some times where you'll wake up and it just doesn't feel real because that person had been in your life for such a long period of time, or during some very important times of in your life. They've been there. So some moments it'll feel like it's not even real, that they're not part of it. But then as the day goes on, you realize it is real. That person, the exeter, is no longer part of your life. They're not responding to your phone calls or to your text messages. And if there are joint responsibilities such as children and homes, they only reach out to you by text, usually by text, because it's easier not to deal with you. So they'll reach out to you by text message to ask about the mortgage, or to ask about the investments, or to ask about the children. So those become reminders that it is very real, that the exeter no longer wants to have that same place in your life. And so you begin to grieve, and others around you might say, well, this happened a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. You're not over it yet? Well, it makes it really hard to get over it, as a lot of people like to say, when you don't have the closure, when you were not able to just talk about what happened, when a person uproots themselves from your life unexpectedly, how they just snatch themselves out of your life, it becomes more difficult. And just because Sunday turned into Monday and Monday turned into Tuesday, and the days continue to progress and move forward, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's smooth for you to continue to move forward, because your heart is still filled with what happened. You no longer have that person in your life when they said they would always be there for you. And they've said all of these sweet things that you've learned to trust over time. When you were in that relationship, it takes time to move forward. So I wanted to bring that up about some of the misconceptions, as well as why some people seek closure and others do not. Please tell me, what do you think? What was your experience? How was your support system when you wanted to talk about it, and 3 months had passed, 6 months had passed, days had passed? How did you get through that? How are you getting through it even now? If you're still kind of finding yourself struggling, you're moving forward, you're doing the best you can do to move forward, but you still have those struggles. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We want to hear from you because we learn from one another. Maybe something that you're doing now to help you move forward will help others. So please share and be respectful in your comments. And don't forget to subscribe so that you are notified at my next video upload. Thank you for coming by, and we'll see you next time.